I'm not gonna beat around the bush, you all saw the title of this video. Yang is a hypocrite. The first time I started to think about this was in Volume 7, during the fight with the Aesops where she says this now iconic line,
"It's not worth it, Blake. They're just following orders now."
Admittedly, a great singer. There's a reason it stood out so much, but in the back of my mind, something just didn't feel right. This feeling only got stronger again in Volume 8 when Yang references this insult again.
"Still just following orders."
By this point, I could start to pinpoint what exactly it is that gave me pause about this sentiment. Yang also has only been following orders. What's worse is Yang has been following the orders of a man she does not like or agree with. Yang pretty openly hates Ozpin after the enormity of his secrets came to light in Volume 6. None of the kids really like him or trust him much, and yet, simultaneously, they continue to do exactly what he told them to do. Go take the lamp to Atlas.
We must get the lamp to Atlas.
Now, I understand what you might be thinking. What other options did they have? It wasn't like they wanted to follow Ozpin's orders, but what else could they have done? And like, yeah, they could have traveled to Vacuo instead, but like, they were pretty dang far from Vacuo by the time this revelation happened. It's an awfully far out of their way trip to go just to spite the man they don't like. So, that was that. Yang teases the Aesops for following orders when she herself has been following orders the whole time too. And that was it, right? Well, part 1. What's all the things Yang has been hypocritical about? Yang gets mad at Ozpin because of his
lies and half-truths.
But then, once they get to Atlas, they immediately start lying and giving half-truths to Ironwood. Then Yang and Blake take it a step further by going behind their backs to give Robin all the information about Ironwood's Amity project.
Robin is on our side. She always has been.
We didn't know that for sure.
Yang gets mad at Raven for not being prominent in her life, but then only seeks her out when she wants a fast travel to RWBY. There's actually quite a bit when it comes to Raven. I noticed it especially when I reviewed the last episode of Volume 5 for my daily reviews. The gist of it is, Yang berates Raven for not wanting to fight Salem, then also turns tail and runs from Salem as soon as there's an opening.
"I'm not like you. I won't run. 'Cause you're afraid of Salem! She'll come after you with everything she has. Or she could come after me. And I'll be standing there, waiting for her."
Come on, everyone, out! Wait!
Very similarly, Yang berates the Aesops for
"But you're huntsmen and huntresses. You can't just back down from a fight."
But then in the Ever After, Yang is the first to run away from a fight that should have been pretty easy for them all, and instead lets the defenseless civilians fight the Jabberwockers instead. I'm sure I could be more pedantic and find other things, but these are really the main ones, and these are the important ones because this has been a very vocal part of Yang's development. She very openly talks about her stance on what she thinks is right and wrong. These things she's saying the others are wrong for are technically virtuous concepts. Fighting for those who aren't as strong as you. Fighting the hard battles even if you're scared. Being open and honest. Making important decisions based on morality and not just because someone tells you to do something. Yang is actually very unique in this regard. Most of the characters aren't nearly as vocal as she is when it comes to their moral standings. These are big, important elements for her development and character. These are the moments that are the resolutions of certain big character arcs for her growth, and by all means, a character who does hold these high moral standings, especially in the story RWBY is telling, would make for an amazingly complex hero. But the problem is all those times she's hypocritical in these regards. All her vocalization instead comes across as grandstanding. The high moral stance she has now feels like rules for thee, not for me. Like she holds everyone else around her to a higher standard than she holds herself to. And I don't think I need to explain this to you, but that's pretty bad. Part 2. Why being a hypocrite is bad. Stories that have characters who have clear hypocrisies, like Yang has shown, are very often meant to be people we, the audience members, aren't supposed to like. Now, I'm not saying characters can't make mistakes or have a change of heart or something, far from it, but that's not what's happening here. In fact, I'm pretty sure the writers are blissfully unaware of just how hypocritical they've made Yang. What should be a character with strong ideals now comes across as someone I don't think I can trust. Yeah, she might say one thing, but her actions in any other given scene might contradict her words' prior message. Boastful, all talk. Characters who get described like this in stories are rarely considered good guys. It would be a different story if this was a real part of her development. Like, take Weiss being racist in Volume 1. This is a negative character trait that is something villains would be guilty of, but Weiss learns and grows and becomes a better person. How well this was actually executed is besides the point. Long story short, if Yang's hypocrisy was a part of her development, that would be a different story. But it's not, because no one talks about it. It's storytelling 101, especially in RWBY. If it's not being addressed, it might as well not exist. No one has talked about Yang's double standards, so it's not going to be addressed. Ever. So let's look at this another way. How can we keep these scenes basically the same, but tie in Yang's moral stance into them so she doesn't come across as hypocritical? Let's take that thing with the Aesops.
But you're huntsmen and huntresses. You can't just back down from a fight.
Let's say, in Volume 9, the Jabberwockers show up in a horde. Yang is ready to keep fighting, but the Rusted Knight grabs her hand and tells her not to engage. It's too dangerous. Yang wants to continue, but then RWBY also insists on them running, having Jean and RWBY lead the group away from the Jabberwockers, while the cat insists they'll be fine. Yang grits her teeth angrily and runs after the other two. But then we get a brief moment of dialogue when they see the teapot lady crying, and Weiss says her line.
I am so tired of leaving places in ashes.
Yang would then say, "What was that? We should have stayed and fought back. RWBY, why did you tell us to run? This makes us no better than the Aesops." RWBY would have an excuse like, "Oh, it's because I don't have Crescent Rose," or "We still don't really understand this place." But with her animations and expressions, we'd be able to see that she's still a little shaken at the idea of entering combat, hinting towards her full breakdown later at the Paper Pleasers. Blake would stand up for RWBY, saying, "She's our leader, and she's always going to know what's best," and smooth things over with Yang, showing the strength of their bond that would lead into their confession in the next episode, and also hammer home the idea that RWBY feels burdened with leadership, which becomes important during her breaking point. And Jean would also reveal how he's become sort of maniacally obsessed with overly protecting people to the point that he'd run from a confrontation, hinting towards his emotional turmoil over the loss of Pyrrha and Penny, and also highlighting how overprotective he's become taking care of the Paper Pleasers all this time. See? We keep Yang true to her word, and also set up a bunch of important stuff that happens later in this volume, with only a few extra lines of dialogue too. And you know what? This was really, really, really easy for me to think of. Like, I'm not gonna lie, this was like Route 1 first idea kind of thing. It was no effort at all to think of this one simple change to fix Yang's hypocrisy. And so it begs the question, if it was really that easy for me to come up with, why didn't the writers think of it too? Part 3. What this really says about the writing in RWBY. So why is this so important to talk about? Because the fact the writers don't take even these small measures to keep the characters' actions and words consistent with each other tells us something. It tells us that they either don't care, or they don't think about the grander scale of what these moments mean for the characters. This one specific scene comes to mind.
Well, good news. I'm low on dust.
Weiss is low on dust? How interesting! What an interesting dilemma that could only make sense in an otherworldly place like this. Except, no, she's not actually low on dust. She never brings this up again throughout the entirety of the volume. Her fighting style doesn't change at all. She doesn't seem to do anything different to conserve however much dust she has left. No. She is not actually low on dust, it seems. Likely because this isn't a plot point that was written into the story. So why does she say this here? Why set up the idea of this interesting concept only for it to not play out? It's because the writer only cared about its meaning in this one specific moment. And they do that a lot. Carrie wanted to have a funny little scene where Blake and Weiss struggle to get her sword out of the vines. So, his solution as to why they do this, rather than just use Weiss's dust to clear the vines away easily, is to just have Weiss throw out this line of dialogue to justify the scene existing. He could have made it so Weiss's sword is also stuck, or is somewhere else like with Yang or something, but no. he decided she should say, "I'm low on dust." He sets up the idea of this interesting concept, but goes nowhere with it, because it wasn't a part of the story, it was just a random first idea excuse he had to justify this gag for this part of the episode. Because the writers only seem to care about the scene currently happening, and I think that's what's happened with Yang. They don't actually think about or care about Yang's moral stances throughout the show's runtime. They don't care that she's told Raven and the Aesops off for doing these things that she then turns around and does herself. They don't care that her actions blatantly go against something she's very clearly been vocal about. They don't care if she's been following Ozpin's orders, because they're just following orders now is a good zinger in this moment. Cut out the context of the rest of the show around them, and yeah, it can work. Cut out the context of the rest of the episodes afterwards, and yeah, Weiss being low on dust here can work. It's all just to get to the specific outcome they want. A good one-liner, a funny little scene. But you can't write a story as big as what RWBY is trying to be, and only care about little one-off scenes and moments like this. And it's especially unforgivable with Yang because, like, these are really important parts of her development. This isn't just a funny little gag moment where we can say, oh, it's fine, they didn't come back to this, it's minor in the long run anyways. No, this is not minor. This is Yang's whole personality. This is the core of who she's grown into as a character in the story. This has shaped her into a uniquely complex individual. She no longer gets angry over something frivolous, like her hair getting cut. She gets angry because she has a strong sense of righteousness and thinks they should be fighting for the betterment of the people. These moments of her growth are literally the climaxes of multi-volume long arcs. And you're just going to, what? Throw that out the window because cutting the fight short was cheaper and easier? Because you couldn't be asked to give your characters depth and have them acknowledge their own actions and how they contradict their prior stances on matters like this? Do you not just think about these characters you've written? Or are they just puppets you marionette from one scene to the next, doing and saying whatever random thing you want because you need an excuse for funny things to happen, for fights to end so you can save money on animation budgets? No time to stop and actually talk about our plot and our actions within it. We gotta just keep running towards the finale because I guess the writers are bored and want the story to be over as soon as possible. Conclusion? I guess. This isn't exactly a revolutionary take or anything. Mostly it just sort of hammers home my problems with how RWBY's writing style often goes. The show is so allergic to acknowledging itself and its own characters' actions within it, and what's worse is it makes Yang insufferable. I used to really love Yang, and even after she lost her bubbly personality after Adam's attack, that's still Yang. I still really loved her when she was recovering at home. I still really loved her when she was training with her new arm. But nowadays, I can't hide it. I hate Yang. And this never-ending grandstanding, preaching, looking down at others and monologuing about how they need to be better people, only for her to turn around and do the exact same crap she's complaining about others doing, that is what ruins her character for me. She's wishy-washy, self-important, has the audacity to condemn others for not living up to these perfect ideals, but excuses her own shortcomings in the same regard. I can't trust her. I can't take anything she says seriously because she goes against her own words all the time. It makes her emotional moments feel hollow because I associate her with empty words. I can't put stock into anything she says, and she says a lot. Like I said, she's very vocal, but it all feels meaningless and empty every time you see her blatantly defying her own words. She feels like a bad friend. Like, I wouldn't want to hang out with her. I would feel uncomfortable and always on edge around her, you know? And that sucks, because like I said, I used to love Yang, and it's absolutely crushing seeing a character I was so in love with become something that makes me squirm with discomfort. I don't like liars. I'm sorry. I don't like people who don't stay true to their own words, especially over something as big and important as the moral standing she talks about so often. And I don't like hypocrites. And Yang is a huge hypocrite. And it's a shame, because with just a few lines of dialogue here or there, she really didn't have to be. Too bad the writers didn't think about or care about any of that. Shout out to my $10 patrons, you're all amazing. Andrew, Valhalla Knight, Chamomile, Classy Critic, Genital War Thunder, Jake, Amber, Hype Man, Scaring Crows, Not All That Evil, Holly, Messiah, Jacob, Ben's Sketchbook, Rain, Omega Fighter, Trash, Wild Pilot, Josh, Twisty, Juan, Bunkin Duncan, Hoodie Angel, Ranger, Hut Mutt Butt, Cloudy Days, The Enigma, Primaroon, Overhypen, Curse Knight, Plague, Unspoken, Tyrene, Thanos, Pandemonium, Peter, Aguirre, and BR Beginner. What do you think? I know Yang's hypocrisy has been a thing people have kind of talked about before, but I wanted to just, really address, her hypocrisy isn't the main issue, it's the fact that the writers let her be hypocritical is the problem, you know? So what do you think? Any other ways you can think to easily fix these things? Because it really is easy to fix these things. What are your thoughts and opinions about Yang, her development, and her supposed hypocrisy throughout the runtime of the show? Any and all thoughts and opinions? I would love to see them in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.